3, 2, 1. Sanjay Dhrona, you are the MD of the Close Care Home in Oxfordshire, with 1 outstanding in care and good across the board. You're regularly on the speaker circuit within the care sector, and you are an avid supporter of the Care Worker charity. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Simon.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So tell me a little bit more about what's going on at the Close. I haven't had the pleasure of coming to the home yet. Obviously, we've been spending a bit of time recently talking about kind of what's going on in your world, but for the audience, let them know what's happening at the Close at the moment.
So we're super lucky. It's a 90-bed care home out in the middle of nowhere in Oxfordshire. We're in the South Oxfordshire, and we've got 4 acres of land. We sit across these amazing 4 acres. They back up onto the River Thames. It's just a stunning sight. There's 5 different suites. One that caters for general nursing, one that's quite advanced nursing. We have a palliative unit, and 2 units that cater to residents that live with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Got you. Okay, understood. It's a gorgeous part of the world. Randomly, I did a charity canoeing or kayaking, event, and I think I canoed past that part of the world, so I know where you are, and it is genuinely gorgeous.
It is amazing. The views that go out over the site are mind-blowing, and then we have everything that's that we have access to. So we actually have the river, like I said, on the back of the property, but we've got a little pier, and then we have a boat, and we actually rent a boat that's accessible, and we take residents out on it.
Wow.
Up and down the river for day trips.
That's a wonderful touch. It's a great thing to have, I guess. As you said, you're super lucky, the fact that you're in such a fantastic environment. So no, that's great. So I always like to start with people's stories. So tell me, how did you get into the sector?
It's quite a process, so go with me on this one. So I graduated from Oxford Brookes in international hospitality and international hospitality management, and our family has a history of hotels and restaurants and the such. So I actually went straight into the event industry and was there for about 10 years, just a little bit longer. It was when, about 4 years ago, our family business needed a bit of support. We went through a period of troubles where we had an amazing management team in place who were still very active in the industry, and they were wonderful. They left to go and explore their own ventures, and in that we just made a couple of decisions that weren't so great for us, and we brought on the wrong team. Through that, we lost our home went from an amazing CQC rating down to being fully inadequate, and I could see this was killing my father. So the trick was to come and help him, and I was helping him out, working on projects or helping him write letters and draft letters, and as I was doing everything, it was just becoming more and more. Now I was working in San Diego on a big production, and I got a phone call, and I was like, look, do you want me just to leave my career for a few months? I'll come in, I'll problem solve, I'll fix, I'll consult, and then I'll go back to my own career. And he said yes. Then I showed him how much I charge for a day, and then he promptly said no. But no, we managed to come to some agreement, and then so came in, and that was at the end of April, 2015, so 4 years ago.
So that's quite a pivotal moment for you personally, and then also for the care home itself as well, because you've got you going and doing something that's completely not, obviously there's an element of hospitality obviously within a care home setting, but you're off doing something completely different, and then kind of getting effectively parachuted in by one's father to go and tidy up after what would appear it turned into a bit of a mess for one reason or another. That must have been quite a challenging process, I would imagine.
It was massively. It was about working through department by department. So I grassroots worked in every department that I could. So I worked in care, worked in the laundry, worked in the kitchen, supported the bistro, and really just worked through department by department, seeing the problems, and went in and fixed. In the meantime, I was working in the day, and then at night I would go back and read the regulation on it. So I found out we weren't necessarily following certain regulations, and we were breaking rules, and not good ones to break. But it was about looking and saying, right, now I've read the rules, how do I apply that to our service? Now, luckily, being the owner-operator, what came out of my mouth at that time became standard operating procedure instantly. So if I said, no, we do not pass laundry in this way, we'd use the chute, and it was done, which meant that we used the chute, which meant we were compliant, and that was fine. So it went through one by one, and we really struggled for a good year, and just went through every single department until we got it. We had a next inspection after about 3 months of my being there, and we went up to a requires improvement. And then the year after, we got a good, and then now we sit with the one outstanding in care and the good overall. And we're literally awaiting our inspection any day now.
I mean, that's one hell of a journey, isn't it? And I mean, it's interesting because it shows that you can go from, because probably there will be some people that will end up watching this and they'll be sat there somewhere, whether they realise that their home has more challenges than maybe they've recognised, or maybe they've just taken over a home where they're undergoing kind of that turnaround process. I would imagine that it's going to be quite heartening for people to see that journey is possible. What did that take for you personally, and then what did that mean for the team?
Blood, sweat and tears. In every way you can imagine. It was backbreaking work. It's hard work. Someone actually that did teach me a lot said, this is a juggernaut going in the wrong direction. So first it's a matter of sort of applying the brakes, down to that emergency stop. Then you've got to try and do a 3-point turn in what is a tiny farm track. And then you've got to start going in the other direction. I'm so happy to say now we're very far down that path in the opposite way. So we're going, we're really nearly to our destination. As close as you can be ever in care, because it's always moving further back.
Of course.
But realistically, we've got pretty far down that track. And it did take a lot of hard work. Part of that was letting people know that we will not accept complacency. Nothing is good enough until it's outstanding. And it was the fact that you were prepared to support your management, support the team, and not to allow them to be trodden over. So the minute you show respect, it was amazing what you got back. So we really did, we worked with the residents, the stakeholders, the families, and it was really creating that one atmosphere to make what is a small family business incredibly successful.
I can imagine, or at least I can try and imagine, being in exactly that set of circumstances where you got a home that's obviously got some fairly significant issues. I mean, where do you start? I mean, it must have been a bit of a baptism of fire to a certain extent. Obviously, it's been a family business and things like that, but you've gone from little to no involvement to running the show.
Zero involvement.
Right, okay.
Zero involvement. It was helping write a few letters. Sure. And going to see, I grew up around the home and it was run so beautifully. It really, really was. The team that had it knew what they were doing and they did it bloody well. It was the only place I could start was from a position of actually being very humble and saying to them, listen, I put it out very clearly. I do not know what's happening, what we're doing, and the way we're going to do it. But the only thing I could think of was to start at one end of the corridor. So the first area of the service that we came into was laundry.
Sure.
And that was at one end of our service corridor. So we started in laundry. And as you work in laundry, you find out what their gripes are. And it's always like the care staff are putting the things in the wrong bags, or, laundry comes down at the wrong times, and you start working, you deal with that one issue. That opens up another 3 issues that you learn about, and you fix one by one. And then slowly we were able to say that the laundry is running well, and it's running extremely well. And that's when we moved on to the next office, which was the kitchen. Then worked through the kitchen, and then we worked through accounts and fixed one by one. So
it was literally like a front door to the back door type set of circumstances. So it wasn't a case of kind of trying to look in on the business and say, right, where do we need to start? It's just a case of, well, we need to do all of it. So just start at the front and we'll finish at the other end of the building.
That's what it is. It's like, where do you start when you've got... And the truth was, we walked in and there were fires all over the building.
Sure.
So as a single individual, knowing what... I also have to remember that where we work, the close is in a very, very small environment. So a number of our staff, the majority of our staff, sorry, come from one village that's about a 10-minute walk away.
Sure.
So if we went around trying to put out all of the fires everywhere, it's about knowing that these people work for you. They love working for the business. They care. They're compassionate. And the last thing you want to do is alienate them for mistakes that actually stem from the top down.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, it's about what we were doing as a management team that wasn't working, or the management team that was there. So we needed to go and fix those elements. And that's what we did. So it was about making sure that the core floor team knew that they were valued in what they did. So it was about showing them the respect as well, to know that they're doing their work. What can we do to help them do it as best as they can?
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And again, that's one hell of a journey, of which you're still in the process of.
Still in the process.
Still striving for outstanding across the board, which is great to see as well, because that shows how much passion and how much energy you've brought to the table, kind of reinvigorating what could have been quite a stagnant team if they've managed to get themselves to a point where they're inadequate. And there's a whole cultural transformation piece that needs to be undertaken to get people there, to reset that operating people, so that, again, it's not just about the regulator, it's about the well-being of the residents, about giving them life experiences, which are something that I know that you're very big on. So you talk very, very passionately. What does what you do mean to you personally?
I'm very surprised what it means. I was a city boy at heart. I came from a place where, I was suited and booted every day, lived a very glamorous lifestyle working in central London, 15-minute walk to work in the morning. I now drive 4 hours a day to and fro. And I wouldn't be doing that, shockingly, if I didn't like the residents and actually care about what we do. And that was new to me. I thought I was going to be there for 4 months. 4 years later, I'm still there. And every day I leave, I'm like, let me just prying myself out. But you never really realize the impact that you have on somebody's life until you sit down with that resident or that member of staff and the team members, and you sit with them and they tell you what it is that you're doing that will change something for them. I have residents that when you sit with them, they love living with us, and they love the people that care for them, and vice versa. Being around a care home also means that you're around people who pass away. So it's when you go to the funerals and you see, actually, we went to a resident's funeral last year, and we had 34 members of our team turn up to this funeral. And that really, I almost cried for that reason, moreover than the resident, who I absolutely adore. But seeing that many people of my family, as it were, there to pay respects to a resident that we loved and cared for meant so much. And it's when you see that people, this is more than a transaction of us providing care and charging for it. You realize it goes a lot deeper. And the residents love knowing about my life and vice versa. And it's a shock to see what it is that they do. But you really, really watch, we tell them about my weekends. Or last year I had an amazing Pride season. So I went to Tel Aviv Pride, and I was at London Pride, and then Brighton. So we actually showed them the photos of the different Pride season, and they were so inclusive over that. And the staff felt like one family because they were involved in what we had done, and also ensures that the service knows that we are a diverse and inclusive workplace, that people support diversity, and you get to bring your whole self to work. So it was really interesting about showing all those different elements of one's life in that space, and being able to do that, and they like it back. It creates that tighter bond. So actually going to work stops feeling like work.
Sure.
Which is a shock, because I never thought I would say that about a care home setting.
Sure. And I guess that's probably driven by that completely different lifestyle to start off with, and then probably some some misconceptions about what a care home is and
Totally.
means and the purpose and all that type of stuff. And yeah, you've got like a bit of a night and day set of circumstances, haven't you? Where as you say, you've done 4 years now, and knowing you, I can't imagine that you're going to be leaving anytime soon. So
No, and it was about, even before I walked in, knowing that this was a family business. You hear things in the media, you hear things in the industry. The industry's appalling at shouting about all the good stuff that we do. There are so many examples of other care homes I go into that are extraordinary and the ideas that they have, but they don't shout about it. So even before I came into the industry, it was a scare home, not a care home.
Mm.
That's what you thought about going into the care environment. There was going to be nothing good there. It was going to be old people being beaten up. But actually, when you're there and there on a daily basis, you see every single success and every single win, and you know that this is happening in other homes up and down the country.
Mm. It must be really satisfying to have been able to take the home on that journey. I guess you never would have probably ended up being in a set of circumstances where you would have ended up getting involved if it hadn't been if the set of circumstances hadn't transpired where you hadn't ended up getting an inadequate. So I've always been a really strong believer that, rightly or wrongly, sometimes bad things create more of a reaction than good things. And in this particular set of circumstances, you seem really happy about what you're doing. You seem to be living your life purposefully, which is really, really important. And you seem to be leading your team in that way as well. So yeah, let's not forget the fact that the home wasn't doing everything that it should have been doing in the past. But you're on that journey, and you're now achieving outstanding things, which is very special.
It is, and having the team there. So we managed to recruit a new management team after I joined, and we got the right team in, and they did brilliantly. And it was a bit of a fight to get them in the first instance, because what we realised is our home is 90 beds, and it's a big site. Now, 90 beds obviously means 90 residents, and 90 residents means 90 potential social workers or power of attorneys or stakeholders, or again, residents that have capacity. So you've then got 180 people to worry about almost. And that is exponentially more and more as you think about it. So there could be 90 MDTs that are involved. So what we realized is very quickly that is too much of an assignment for any human being to take care of. On top of that, the way I look at it is that the care industry has done some amazing things, but sometimes we failed in sort of upskilling our people that grow within it. So the way I saw it was a lot of nurses who have qualified to be nurses and caregivers got up to the point where they were delivering exceptional care, but then were asked to be the manager of a service. But maybe they didn't really have the skills or the abilities around knowing about the nutrition and the food elements, the kitchens and the servicing of your extraction fans, or the fact that your Legionella checks and PAT testing. But these are all things that are important to the way the service runs.
Of course.
Now, the nurse cares about care. So we were putting the wrong people in the wrong jobs. When we identified this on our site, especially again based on the size, I didn't think that the management structure that was fit for purpose. So we applied to the CQC to actually have a co-registered manager.
That was quite a journey as well. I remember you explaining this to me a little while ago. That was quite a what do you call it? A bit of a revelation.
Yeah, it was quite innovative, because they hadn't really seen. They understood if a manager went off on maternity leave or a long-term sick or whatever the case may be, that they wanted to bring another manager in for that foreseeable future so that business had good leadership in place. They were a little bit conscious of how we were going to manage two people having the legal responsibility across an entire service. Once we went through that process with them, they were hesitant, but welcomed it, and we had an amazing inspector who really was on our side and said, yes, let's try it. And I said very openly to them and quite bluntly that clearly whatever you guys are doing now isn't working. and whatever we're doing, it's not working. So why don't I have a go? What are we going to lose?
Yeah.
And they were quite supportive of that. So I was given the freedom to try this. We put it into place and it worked. So we had 2 clinical managers. One manager was responsible, just because of the geographical layout of the beds in our home. One manager had 35 beds, the other had 53.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked really well. We put in a non-clinical services manager, which was really important for me. And that person had responsibility of facilities, hotel services, the kitchens, the gardens, name it. Anything that wasn't directly associated to the delivery of care was their job to worry about.
And that was across all of the 90 beds.
And
so
that's all across the 90
sure.
beds. So, you know, we need a new hoist, that lift needs servicing. Who's got the contract for, you know, the new flooring over there? And it was literally that person was responsible for that. And they've done a standout job at doing that.
Mm-hmm.
As did the clinical managers. They were able to focus on care delivery. So that's where we saw the real marked improvement in what we were doing from a care side.
It's amazing, isn't it? There's a couple of points that you've raised there around hiring people into roles that they might have a good tenure and be highly skilled at what they do today, but does that necessarily mean that they're a manager or a leader? Quite often not. Mm-hmm. And we see it in our business that it happens, and it ends up not working out particularly well. Also, management structures where you've got different sizes of homes. Obviously, 90 beds. I mean, that sits at the kind of the upper echelons of. I mean, it's not as big as some of the homes out there, but it's certainly in the kind of. It's got to be in the kind of top 10%, I'd imagine, and that requires a different operating model, and that requires thinking outside of the box to make sure that it works, so that the provision of care and that from a sustainability perspective, it's got to work. Everything's got to stack up, and everything's got to work.
What do you do in return then when you walk into a new service that you're consulting on, or helping them with, or advising on, and you see that there's a team that in place maybe that aren't as skilled in the areas that they need to be? Mm-hmm. Are you an advocate of training people up, or what would your advice be? Where do you sit? Is it taking them away from this service and exploring opportunities there, or is it you're in the service, you're bringing in people to train that individual specifically, or where do you go, or is it action planning, goal setting?
It can be a range of things. There's no kind of silver bullet that will fix all of these sets of circumstances. So, I mean, we're blessed in the fact that the team has a huge amount of leadership capacity that they employ, rather than being. Our model effectively is we've plucked senior operations and kind of people from leadership positions from the operations world, and then put them in a coaching and consulting capacity. What our main aim is to not look past the problems, but to work out what the cause of the problems is, and we'll reverse engineer what the strategy should be thereafter. Now, sometimes that means some of the people just aren't right. Maybe they shouldn't even be in the building in the first place. Sometimes you've got people with bags of potential, but they're just not ready for that leadership role, management role. Sometimes you've got a fundamentally good team, but you've got a handful of well poisoners that are causing all sorts of problems, and the tail's wagging the dog. Every set of circumstances is slightly different. What we try and empower the leadership to be able to go and do is to be able to objectively look in on their business. Mm-hmm. My coach calls it getting up in the helicopter. So get yourself 50,000 foot up and kind of look in on it and go, right, okay, so this is where we are and this is where we need to be in the future, and it's helping them build out a plan to help them achieve whatever it is they're looking to achieve in it. Somewhat of a politician's answer, I know, but it's because every set of circumstances can be so different. It's quite difficult to give a specific answer, but yeah, it's all about getting to the root cause of the problem, and then all of our services are bespoke. We can build a program relevant to the client, and it's just a case of plugging in our guys and just making sure that they're making constant improvement, tweaks, and step forwards relevant to where they want to be in the future. Because it's got to be. We help teams to get to a point where they mapped out their vision and their aspirations. We help them go on that journey. So it can be challenging, of course, and you're always going to get people who aren't necessarily up for the journey. But if they're not up for the journey when we're there, they're not going to be up for the journey when we're not there. So it's making sure that, again, we're making incremental improvements in the right direction.
It's amazing what bringing an external team in to help you does to those well poisoners.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it. We've seen it so dramatically, where the moment you start shining a light, that panic sets in,
mm-hmm.
and then it's, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the right environment. We've been through that, where the moment you see something, and sort of sometimes we even become blinkered in it, but you see it, and then it's like, no, we don't want to be here because they're going to see what we've been doing, and then they quite quickly want to leave.
If you're undergoing,
quite naturally,
what we experience is, okay, so let's look at it from a management perspective and a leadership perspective. So from a leadership perspective, let's say we're going to make a cultural difference and that person's not going to fit in culturally anymore. Or from a management perspective, when you're talking about systems and things, if you're not doing the basic fundamental parts of your job role, or you're making up notes, or just not completing the expectations of your role, whatever that might be, if you know you can't get away with it, people are going to get out sooner rather than later, or they'll end up getting pulled over the hot coals because they haven't done what is being expected of them.
I think people are also quite scared of knowing the challenge that exists. The moment you shine the light on, actually, you're only a third of the way up this mountain and there's still 2/3 to go, that also, unfortunately, can be quite a scaring point to a lot of people. But what's important is you're only doing it for the betterment of the care of the residents. That's all it is.
Yeah, and if you're not, then again, you should.
Then if you're not, there's no point you being there in any case. So it's when people see that, when you see how much work there is to do, I can hold my hands up and say this absolutely truthfully. I won't even say there was a day. There were many, many days when I woke up and I rang my dad up and I said, "You do know that this would make a brilliant hotel." I was like, we can close this place down within a few months and a few $100,000. I will have this as the best event wedding hotel in Oxfordshire. It will be stunning. We're going to have, people queuing up to book this place out all summer, every summer. And he was like, no, we do this and we do it well. We do it properly. So nice try. We couldn't do that to the residents. There's 90 people that we're responsible, and we've promised them a forever home until they pass. This is what we've done. So he was like, no, we're going to do it, and you're going to. So, yeah, and he literally said, nice try a few times, and put down the phone and said, we're going to do it properly.
Comes back to that thing, doesn't it? You personally went on a bit of a journey there, your own kind of transformation. Now, if somebody tried to persuade you to turn it into a hotel, I can imagine what the response would be.
No, I'm really happy doing it. I'm really happy now being there. And up until the point that we have, visions and plans for the future.
Exciting times. Well, you are obviously you've got your one outstanding in caring. I know you've got big aspirations to be able to go 5 out of 5, which is great to hear. Tell me about the care provision that you provide, but then also the life experiences that you're trying to and the environment that you're trying to create for your residents. So
across the service, we've got general nursing, obviously palliative, and we cater for residents that have Alzheimer's and dementia. What's different is our services also in the Alzheimer's and dementia area is split up into 2. So we have quite a high needs area. And we've designed that space specifically for those residents. So it's as big and as open and as available for them to live a life full of choice and dignity and freedom, and as much as that we can do in a safe way. So we're so blessed with our grounds as well. We have residents that just are obsessed with being outdoors. And knowing that we have our contained environment that's safe for them to be able to wander down to the river without feeling mollycoddled or claustrophobic or suffocated by people around them. And that little freedom that you give is mind-blowing in terms of individual residents. But what do we do that's different? For me, it's been a big piece of work around real experiences. by the time you move into a care home, you know, our average age is around about 80 years old. That means you've had 80 years of choosing things and living a real life. And I find that a lot of the times, as an industry, we give people a fake experience. So it's, oh, let's all go bowling, and it's bowling in the garden with some plastic pins. Why don't you take the residents down to a real bowling lane? It's, we're going to have a cinema showing, and it's, you know, on a TV screen. It doesn't give you that full experience. Something that we have at the home is a dartboard. And when we said we want to put a real dartboard in, I was all but attacked by so many people that work there. They were like, you can't put a dartboard in, it's got sharp darts. You're going to, you know, somebody's going to poke their eye out. And God willing, for after 2 years, nothing has ever happened. We look at the risk that's associated and we manage that risk. I don't personally feel that there's any dignity in having a fake experience. So we try and pull the right people in at the right times and give residents that real opportunity to make those choices that they've been making all of their lives. And just because they're in a care environment, I don't think that they need to be patronized now. There's a really special one that we introduced at the tail end of last year, and it goes down a storm. We've got a takeaway night, and it's really small, but it's so doable for every home. A lot of homes have their own kitchen teams. A lot of those kitchen teams are excellent cooks, excellent chefs. So in the village that opened up, there was a pub that got converted into this takeaway, and it was a genius idea. So one of the hairdressers that we have in our service brought me the new menu. Now, all of that day, I was thinking about ordering a takeaway. And my appetite that day was even more than it is on a normal day-to-day basis.
It's the availability bias. If somebody shows you a menu, you can start thinking, oh, yes, I think I could have a bit of that, some of that later.
That's all it was. I was like, oh, I'm really looking forward to having a takeaway. So that got me thinking about helping residents, making sure that they're eating as much as possible and the best meals. So I was just thinking, I was like, well, if I've seen a takeaway menu and it's stimulated my appetite, would it do the same to a resident who's not eating as much? And will they just eat that extra 2 or 3 spoons more? Will they get a better night's sleep because they've had a better meal? Yes. So let's think about all of the impact that can have and what can we do. So I walked into the kitchen. I said, right, I've got a challenge for you. I said, I want you to open a takeaway. This does not mean that we're calling up the local curry house or the pizza place and getting a delivery. I want you to do it, and I want you to give the residents the best experience, and that includes residents that have texture modified meals. And that's exactly what our team have done. So we print a menu, and there's 6 or 7 options on there, so we're not just giving them a couple. There's a proper list of options. It gets slid under their door, and the carers and the chefs that day will spend time with the residents and pick exactly what they're going to have. That order goes down to the kitchen, and it's delivered in a proper takeaway bag, presented in the proper packaging of whatever it is. So the Chinese food came in Chinese boxes in the little foil containers. Pizzas came in boxes. The burger and chips literally came in the plastic bags with the proper burger boxes. And we did it all brilliantly, and what we saw was that residents really engaged with that process, being able to pick the takeaway theme, the menu, picking their meals. And actually what residents did was the way that we would eat a takeaway at home. They held dinner parties in their bedrooms. So we had residents who had 2 other residents over, they watched the TV, they put a movie on, and they sat there eating their meal together, but not in the dining room.
Sure.
That was a real experience. But it meant that if you were on a texture modified meal, we got to make it.
Sure.
We got to make sure that the meal was as fortified with the ingredients, and knowing that the different criteria that our residents have. That's real person-centered care, but just done in a very different way.
That's I've never heard of that before. I was just thinking it's such a nice touch, isn't it? Because I mean, both of us are big on food, but like it's such an important part of just life as a whole to make that an enjoyable experience, or far more enjoyable experience, to make it far more sociable experience and things like that, to make it far there to be that kind of extra layer of choice, and then level of heightened interest because it's once a month, or was it
Once a month.
Once a month. It's also something to look forward to as well. So, curry night or fish
Yeah,
and chips or
well, it's takeaway night, and the best bit is then we've teamed in with our activities team even more, so they'll make sure that there's a program of activities that go around takeaway nights. If there's a particular theme for it, a couple of other elements leading up in the week or week before that, we'll do that. Then I know it's a bit cliche, but there's arts and crafts that are always going on in the care home. So what we've done is we now buy plain white or brown takeaway bags, and we've got special stamps. So the residents actually in one of those craft sessions will make the bags for the takeaway night.
Okay, got you.
So for the Indian one that we did recently, they stamped it with the close takeaway. So we had a massive stamp made so people could do that. Mm-hmm. And then the bags were decorated with little Taj Mahal stamps and bits and pieces. But it worked. And residents decorated them, so they made 90 of those bags, rather than it just being a plain brown paper bag.
Sure, and then it becomes a meaningful experience again, doesn't it? Because not only are they just doing something fun, they're then contributing to the community in which where they're living and things like that, which is a really, really nice touch.
Completely. We have a sensory garden, and in the sensory garden, it's, the gardener's not allowed in that place alone. The sensory garden is kept and maintained by the residents. They're the ones that own that space. So for him to be in there, a resident has to be in there with him. So it's great interaction. And it shows, it's not just carers that work with residents, it's the whole home. Mm-hmm. So the gardener works with our residents and he'll be in that space with them. They'll all be gardening together. What's amazing is that garden has an output of produce, whether it's herbs or some vegetables, as well because we've got a lot of fruit trees in the garden. So for the chefs to use any of the herbs that come out of it, they have to have a resident with them when they go and pick the herbs or those veg. So what's really sweet is the sage that went into the stuffing for the roast on Sunday came out of that garden. But the resident went with a chef to pick it. So the connection between the different elements of the home and the residents is great, or greater than a lot of other spaces where it's just carers and nurses that interact with residents.
Interconnecting the different experiences as well, that's thinking on a completely different plane, because it would be easy to do those things individually and they would be fantastic on their own, but there's almost it's like a supply chain, isn't it? You've got like a production, you've got supply chain, you've got people contributing in a meaningful way, which again from an experience perspective, that goes way beyond just what the CQC says. Obviously the regulator needs to be there for all the right reasons, but ultimately you're providing real purposeful, meaningful experiences for the residents, which is fantastic.
It's ownership. We constantly ask for ownership from our team, and no matter what service you're in, every service is like, take ownership of a situation, take responsibility, account for your actions. We took that, but we also turned it toward the residents, because the residents aren't passive in care. And I think a lot of people forget that. So we say person-centered care, and we ask for residents to be involved and their stakeholders to be involved in planning of care delivery, which we do. But what else can you do to make sure that they're involved in the whole process? So it's about them being involved in the decision-making within the home, or the choices, and actually purposefully supplying them. So we have a resident who loves to vacuum, and literally what she wants to do is, after lunch has taken place in the bistro, she will get the vacuum out. Now, there's a risk of, that she doesn't put the cable away appropriately, but we have managed that process. So somebody's there that would be doing the vacuum, they're allowing her to do that, but just keeping an eye and making sure that she's involved. Now, her day is greater for it because she's happier. And more so, she's getting this amazing mobility and exercise in physically vacuuming. So she's happy.
Yeah.
And that makes our life a lot easier. So it's a win-win.
The fact that she's so more mobile because she's doing something that she's passionate about, of course, that's going to make a big difference on her just general fitness levels and mobility and things like that, which is obviously going to serve her into her future. But then also from a trip and fall perspective, it's enabling her to have a more full life. Because of course, if somebody does trip and fall, then obviously that can cause them all sorts of problems, even with all the necessary risk assessments and things done. One thing that seems to be consistent with what you're talking about is the fact that you're willing to take positive risks. Obviously, you need to wrap around the right risk assessments, etc. But one of the things that seems really clear from what you're saying is the fact that you're open-minded for people to do things that others might not, because you're taking what seems to be a sensible and pragmatic approach to it.
I think, thank you, and I think that's very accurate. But I think that comes from the fact that I'm not from the industry. So I will break the rules within reason. But there are certain rules that we have in place. And the strongest tool that I've ever had in my tool case was the question why. And I find a lot of people, and even I get to that stage now, and that's just after 4 years, and I get questioned on it, and I was like, damn you for picking my question against me. And I say, well, because that's how we do it. But why do we do things that way? And why have we always done certain things in a certain way? We're so used to saying, oh, no, you can't do that. Well, and then we don't question why that choice was there, or that statement was there in the first place. So a lot of these things, you just think, right, what's the risk? Now, we are a high-end care home, and we are up at the upper end of the market in terms of the way that we afford and cost out things. So yes, we do have a lot of staff, and that allows us to take those risks. But it's a very chicken and the egg situation. If we didn't have that many staff, could we facilitate the choices that our residents want to make? We can only do that because we have the people, but then we have to charge. So it's one after the other. And the way it works is that we can only do one because we have the other, and we can only do the other because we have that appeal, that's what we do. Sure.
I always talk about the things that you do in your business, like your brand DNA, your operating model, your culture. That's what you do kind of internally, and then externally that's reflected in your brand and your reputation. And those two things need to be congruent, because a lot of businesses, care businesses aside, they'll try and market a product that isn't what the real product is, and how people are living out their kind of vision and values within the business, and people can see it, and they'll be off put if it's not congruent. Or if they experience it, then they'll be even more annoyed, because they will have invested time, money, energy into a product, service, whatever it might be, and then it's either a waste or it hasn't delivered what their level of expectation is. What you're talking about there is the fact that you're going all in on probably over-investing to a certain extent into making sure that you're delivering the best possible product that it can be. And at this juncture, you're outstanding in one area and looking for more. That's what the community that you serve will expect from the close. And that's obviously something that you're very, very passionate about. But to my understanding, there's no kind of disconnect in between those two worlds. Unfortunately, a lot of people tend to get that wrong, and they don't understand where the disconnect lies in many ways.
We were super lucky in the sense that the people that work with us, our team, our close family, are mind-blowing, amazing human beings that work so hard for us. And we came to a point as to try and understand how we were going to formalize certain things. Like, so we had values and, the code of care and all these things that we had in place. But to be honest, they were in a book and in our service user guide, or in our staff matrix, and that was in a drawer. We weren't ready up till about a little while ago to understand exactly what our values have become. So we knew we were doing things well and we were doing things properly and making sure that we were happy with the quality of care that we were delivering. But we didn't know how to formalize a framework around it and what we wanted certain titles to be. So it was only a few weeks ago that we formalized our value process and our value offering. But we put that through as a management team. We realized what qualities do we have, what do we want, how do we want to go through a particular situation. Something that you said a little while ago really resonated, and it was about how you would look at your values in...
I think, so there were two things we were talking about. So there was, my understanding of the situation were prior to you, casting your values into stone, you were doing them implicitly.
Yes.
Was it that point?
Yes.
Yeah. So you had a well-aligned team before, but you hadn't created the framework, the operating model in which to go about whichever role you held within the organisation, and that it sounded like from what you were explaining, you were on a journey at the moment of really embedding that, working out what your values meant to you and to the team, and then attaching behaviours to those particular values to make sure that people have got a decision-making tool, so that when they're going about again doing whichever role they take within the business, they've got that framework in which to operate. And it's such a powerful tool, because they say that values are what you should be doing when the kind of the manager isn't in the room type thing. It's setting out the leadership team's expectations around what does outstanding mean for us, and how do we show up in the world.
Yeah, and that's what actually giving that example now makes perfect sense. So what we've done is actually print off our values as small, almost business cards. And it was 2 weeks ago we've turned around and said to our team, this is now a piece of uniform. You're expected to have this on you. So whenever you encounter a situation, just look at that and reflect on that situation, and look at the values with which we operate, and make sure that everything that's aligned, or that situation aligns to how you would deal with it based on our values. And that's the helpful part. And they carry it on them. So we've got them on lanyards. And I've said, obviously, if you're administering personal care, maybe don't have it waving in the resident's face. They won't enjoy that. But they've got it on their pocket, and we've given it to every single member of staff, from the kitchen team all the way through to the care and the service floor, the nurses. And I expect the managers to be walking around with it also.
It's a positive reinforcement of
Yes.
a good quality behaviour, and that's what, if you've embedded, or you're in the process of embedding your values, that's what you're looking to do. You're looking to try and alter, to not necessarily alter, but to sustain those good habits. I mean, we're humans, we're creatures of habit at the end of the day. We need to make sure that any team, and this is true of my team as well as this big business agnostic, but if you don't have that operating system in which to show up to work and things, that's when troubles arise. That's I mean, that's basically it. You can, to some people it sounds quite woo-woo, sounds a little bit out there, like culture, values. Oh yeah, it's on the website, don't worry too much about
trippy.
it. Yeah, exactly. It's almost a little bit out there. The fact is, if you've got a cohesive, high-performance team of people that are operating within a system, funnily enough, that makes really, really good business sense, and your team are happy. And if your team are happy, your residents are going to be happy. It's that simple.
We found the accessibility a huge part of the way that we work.
Okay.
Luckily, being on site a lot, and then our managers, with the triptych of managers that I have, 2 registered, the 1 non-clinical, there's a manager in the service 7 days a week. Now, normally that wouldn't be the case, because with the 1 manager, you need 2 days off. So most places are Monday to Friday, and you've got the manager not available or on call during the weekend. So we found that coverage is very helpful. The managers are always they're forever on the floor and around. But the team as well, our team are very empowered. And they don't really have a problem about kicking up a fuss. If they're not happy with something or they have a question, they have no qualms about walking right into my office and saying, why is this? And then we'll answer the question, we'll go through it. And then by the time that we've got an agreement or everyone understands the process, I think that availability or that presence of your team knowing that as a carer, you can walk into the managing director's office and have a very direct conversation about the choices that we're making, that kind of fosters the right environment to want to be in. Because there will be questions that you have. You may not have the foresight to make a call, but luckily having worked on the floor or still doing, being on the floor for lunch times or whatever it is, when you're there, you kind of see the choices that you're making and you might run it past them then. But it's about being available and accessible. So we try not to have our lunches in the office. We eat with residents on the floor. The managers also have laptops. So if it's not an office-based activity, I really ask them to set themselves up in the middle of the care floor, in one of the dining rooms and one of the lounges. And that way, if there's a question, it's answered immediately on the spot. So it's about, it was about trying to get those values right, that people knew how we were working. And I think accessibility or availability was a big part of that.
What you seem to be in the process of doing is building a real high-performance team, which I think is very, very important, because having a high-performance team delivers results across the board. And again, that's all about designing a culture rather than having a culture it being by default. So what's your definition of high performance?
Getting everything done and making a profit. It really is that. It's just making sure this care that you're giving is as good as it can be for the residents, making sure they're happy, doing what needs to be done in an outstanding way, and obviously making sure it's manageable in terms of it's sustainable to a fact that you can continue to do it. There's no point being an amazing care home if you're going to close down after 3 months because you've gone out of business because you've not managed the business appropriately. So everyone has their duty of care within a care home. I believe that mine is to make sure that the service continues by the choices that I make from a financial perspective, from a policy perspective that I might put in. The carers have their own duty of care, as do the chefs or the activities team. But high performance is basically doing everything that needs to be done. You've
all got your individual contribution that ultimately you need to make sure that the business works, to make sure that you can build that high performance culture and that you can deliver outstanding care, and it's like a virtuous cycle.
Yeah, the puzzle has to be complete, and each single person is knowing that what part of the puzzle you are, or the brick of a pyramid. Not everyone is. Everyone needs to know that what they're doing supports somebody else, and whether it doesn't need to be that just because you're on the, you're on the lower levels of, if you're on the grassroots and you're delivering amazing care, you're on housekeeping, it doesn't make you any less important than anybody else in the service. And that's something that we've really tried to ingrain into people, that they have a voice. And our staff are really good at now using that. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't. But no, it's just they're really, really good at making sure that they're walking in and saying what needs to be said. And that reassurance is really helpful, to know that if there was a problem, you would know about it. When something goes well, you know about it. And that's that element of that community that we've been looking to build.
What's interesting, so to summarise some of the points that you've been saying there, or one specifically just to start off with, you're talking about being open-minded, and that's you leading the way by being open-minded, but then instilling that in all of your team, to the extent that they know if they get presented with something that they think that could be improved, it's not just a case of, oh well, nobody's going to take me seriously, I'm just a carer or just in the laundry or anything along those lines. It's, I'm an important cog in this wheel in the cog in the wheel. I can't remember what the analogy is. I play a significant part within this organisation. It's my it's required of me to, if I see something, an area of improvement, I need to go and knock on Sanjay's door and say, hey, we need to have a chat about this because I can see an opportunity for improvement.
Totally, and not every idea that I will ever have will be the best idea ever. And sometimes I run it past I'll go straight to the residents. You see, what's amazing is the people that we have the absolute honor to take care of have a lifetime of experience. And as I was saying earlier about residents wanting to be involved in your life and sharing in what you're doing, and whether it's pictures or videos or stories of what you've been up to whilst you're away from the home. But it's in reverse as well. They've got all these amazing experiences that you can garner.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that was asking the residents to return questions about being able to pick what furniture we're having in the home. Or what should we do about this? So our residents help interview our staff.
Mm-hmm.
New team members will go through an interview process that includes sitting with a few residents and going through a couple of questions that they have to ask. Now, every time, I'll tell you what, the residents have got it bang on. They're like, no, they're not going to stay. No, not a good care. And then we're like, are you sure? They're like, yep, trust us, we know. And they know it every time. So we listen to what the residents have to say,
mm-hmm.
and try and get them involved in that process.
Again, it comes back to being open-minded, doesn't it? It's being open-minded to take. As you say, you've got a fantastic team, and then you've got a group of people who have accumulated wisdom over their years and things like that. Why not make sure that that's an integral part of what you're doing as an organisation?
The involvement that they feel from it as well. Like I will get sent a P&L for the service. Now, as financially minded as I am, sometimes things will confuse me, but I know that resident over there used to be a bookkeeper and an accountant. So I'll be like, can you teach me this? And that 20 minutes that I'll spend, the resident will value that time so much because you're asking for their advice or their opinion. And it's not just the material things, it goes down a little bit deeper. That's the real connection. And they adore it. So one of our residents who passed away quite recently, she used to be an English teacher. So we had a member of our staff whose granddaughter was struggling at school. And we connected the resident to the member of staff's grandchild.
Oh, wow.
And the resident actually ended up tutoring through, and she would bring in, but they formed this amazing bond between child and resident, and they got that amazing experience. But I think that came out of the community that we foster, where the member of staff was able to tell us, and we actually know that the resident was an English teacher but wanted to be involved. And then they also ran the book club for a while. So it was kind of interesting that where you can get to if we're not fixated on necessarily the goals of just the regulator. We've actually realised our goals are set by our residents.
What's really interesting about some of the stuff that you've been talking about, I think I mentioned earlier about getting up in the helicopter and being able to look contextually in your business. One of the things that it would appear that you and your team are really good at is looking in on your business and looking at how to connect the dots. Because again, there are lots of fantastic things that are happening at the close, but being able to draw a link in between those two things to make sure that there's a meaningful opportunity there to be able to connect to connect the dots, to take something from what would be a fantastic experience in whatever way, shape or form, and then turbocharging it by being able to take it to that next level as well.
That's true, and thank you for seeing that. I think the reason we've been able to achieve that is by being uncompromising on what we are prepared and not prepared to accept. That whole experience is a very expensive one to be able to do. It's why only a few people own helicopters. but we've turned around and said we're not going to do certain things, and we're unprepared to compromise on that. In terms of, if we don't think that we can afford to, to care for somebody in the right way, we're not going to put that in that position. So we're quite selective in terms of making sure that we achieve the right fees in order to continue to provide this service. We're only able to do that. We're owner-operator. I don't have a huge back office, head office that's, supplying everything for me, or helping me write policies. We have to do it and physically do them ourselves. So there's a lot of processes that involve that hands-on from the managers. I think that's what, again, brings us closer, but again, gives us the ability to look up at it and be a bit more holistic in our viewpoint. But it takes a lot of convincing and a lot of work around the way that you start financing that.
The model's got to be right at the end of the day, hasn't it?
Yeah, and again, like you say, you have to provide something in order to meet those expectations. There's no point setting those expectations if you're going to miss them.
Of course. One thing that's abundantly clear is the fact that you've managed to lead a team from a really challenging space into what's a really, really good space. And I know, this isn't a finite thing for you. There's a constant journey there that you're always looking to achieve. But what have been the most important leadership lessons that you've learnt in life, or maybe more specifically over the last 4 years?
Listen. The core thing that I can say is to listen and also reflect. People, as a care provider, you are in a position where you are responsible for the people that you care for. And then you're responsible for the people that work for you, about giving them that continued home and a continued workplace to make sure that, you're responsible for. So realistically, the 90 plus the 130 people that work for us, that's 210 people that, if I mess up, they're gone.
Sure.
And that's homes and livelihoods. So what we need to do is I try and hear what they have to say and the way that they have to say it and understand where they're coming from. And I can only do that if I have that ability to retract and reflect on what the actions that need to be taken are. Again, when you're providing care, because we have a regulator who is so powerful, and I give them all the credit for being able to do that, you can run scared a lot of the time. And if you're not confident in your approach, and you get a request in from your inspector or from your local safeguarding team or your local authority, from a quality and monitoring visitor, you're going to react so quickly that maybe the actions that you're taking aren't as thoughtful. So it's I'm trying to struggle to think of the word when you just kick out and just.
Oh, what, like an emotional response?
Yeah, like a gut reaction or a quick reaction.
Like a knee-jerk reaction.
Knee-jerk reaction. There we go. I was doing that with my legs, thinking a knee-jerk reaction. You're going to have a knee-jerk reaction that's not going to serve well in the long run. It's like buying the cheap. Get something cheap and you what is it? You break it twice.
Oh yeah, buy it once. I can't remember what the analogy is.
Yeah, there's something.
It's basically the concept is to buy quality so that you don't have to pay for it twice.
Exactly, and that's what I think about. We're so used to making rash decisions or knee-jerk reactions that the ability to step away, having listened to what everyone's had to say, and then balance that. It takes a real manager to be able to come up with the answer, but it takes a real leader to listen to everyone, I think. And
Wise
put
words.
I don't know, that's just my opinion.
Wise words.
I'm going to roll with it.
You've led your team through to some pretty successful stuff, so I'd say that is those are wise words. So what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Now, I credit my dad with a lot of stuff, but this is honestly his best thing ever. And he said this to me a few times when we had the hotels and the restaurants and sort of all went over my head. And then when working in events, my job was to take every budget and maximize it and milk it to get the most amazing experience for the people attending the event. So I was on the other side about being, as thrifty as possible. When I started working at the Close, he said one thing to me, and he reinforced this almost in every conversation, and he does to this day, which is don't make the difference between £10 or £100 or £1,000 make the difference. think about it contextually. There's no point trying to save that little bit of money to make that little bit more profit, because again, if it's the wrong choice, you're only losing your sleep at night. You've got to do well by the people we care for. Make sure you make the right choices, and there's no point making 20 quid extra profit at the end of the year if it's been a struggle to get there. And that the people have been unhappy because of that choice. So buy the best, do what you can. And he's talking about hundreds and thousands of pounds. He goes, if you make 100 grand less, that's fine, but you do it well. You do it ethically, you make sure that people are well taken care of. And I've really held on to that in a lot of the choices that we make. So, if we look at the hoist, we look at the chairs that we're going to pick. So we've gone through all of the chairs that we like, and we've let the residents pick what chairs they're having in the home. And that's been through a consultative process every week. We have these little tubes that people vote in, but as they're picking, they've got to pick that, rather than me saying, right, we're going to have this chair because I like it. So, and because it's the cheapest.
That comes back to my point earlier around what you're doing in your business. That's reflecting into the brand and what people expect of the Close as an organisation and things. You're being very congruent in the fact that, yeah, you're sitting at the upper end of the market, but what you're doing is over and above what you would expect.
Yes.
Maybe elsewhere, and it's justifying what. It's a large figure from a kind of in the context of the rest of the market, maybe, but it's justifiable because we're doing all of this stuff to make sure that it's the absolute best possible service that it can be. And
once you've done it, you're kind of there. Like you said, you buy it once, you buy well, you buy once. So realistically, that chair or that hoist or that service contract that we're going to get, you're not buying it every year. These things, certain things will last you. So, a combi oven. If you're going to buy a combi oven, you're not buying it every 6 months. Yeah. So it's a false economy, isn't it? If you're just buying stuff that's crap anyway, and that's just not gonna stand the test of time, you might as well just go and buy the thing that's going to last because it's sustainable. It comes back to that whole exactly. You find it works better, it works longer, and because of certain choices that we've made, we've then been able to afford other things because actually, buying that right piece of equipment has meant that we've sped up in other areas that saved us money that we've been able to afford another member of staff. Yeah, that's the dream. So, the dream is to get I don't think any service really will be able to be 100% one-to-one, but as close as we can get to that would be mind-blowing. Of course, absolutely. So, if you were to give a piece of advice to somebody looking to make a positive impact on the care sector, what would that be? I thought you were going to say to buy a care home. I was like, please don't. I was like, stop. Dangerous game. So positive impact. Come in with your head on straight. It sounds so silly. You have to leave all of your expectations, all of your bias at the door. And you've got to come in with a clear mind, knowing what it is that you want to do. I knew that I wanted to fix this as an initial aspect to give my family or my parents back their pride in the work that they had done for 30, 40 years. So that was my goal. Now, in doing that, I was able to tick all these other boxes. Now that's taken over by the fact that I want to do best by the residents, 100%, to make sure that I know what they want and how to deliver it. But I've only been able to do that by keeping them at the core focus and my goal there. And that's been not being waylaid by, should it be this way, could it be that way, do we want this? So it was about the pure focus of keeping the residents in the forefront and having that clear mental space again to make those choices. So it was about dropping everything else at the door and then starting fresh. Being objective and just keeping focused. Yeah, there was a lot of issues with that in terms of wanting to say, should we be worried about this person coming in, or do we dress the home up because that we've got I've got a visit from this person. No, it's about making sure that if you do everything right and you're achieving that one goal, everything else will tick in. I'm not worried if a commissioner from the local authority wants to come in to see the home. I don't actually actively tell many of the team members that that's going to happen, because I think if they're focused on the end goal, which is the best care for the resident, everything else that commissioner might see that day should be active proof of it.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, you mentioned earlier the regulator obviously has an important job. The CQC definitely needs to be there, and largely I think they do a great job. But that score should be it's almost that should be secondary to providing the best possible life experience for the residents. Ultimately,
Completely.
and building a sustainable care home business.
I did have a very interesting question in my last inspection from one of the inspectors that was there.
Okay.
They walked through that day, and we were painting over a dignity tree. Now, these things confuse me anyway. I don't understand, like, why you need to... I think the people that you hire, they should have those values at their core. So why you need to remind them of that with a mural of a tree, I never understand that. So
does that feel like almost lip service to you in some
it's
way?
Total lip service, and that's exactly what I said to the inspector. But it was... So she walks in and she's like, right, why are you painting that over? I said, well, it's a dignity tree. She said, yeah. And I said, well, here's the issue. I believe that the people we should be hiring, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay, great. And I was like, well, and here's one really glaringly obvious point. And she was like, well, I said, this area of the home is for the residents that live with Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, do you have a tree in your dining room? She's like, no. I was like, so the residents are already living with a state of confusion as it is, and then you're confusing them further by having a tree in your dining room. I was like, why are you trying to make their day worse? I was like, so what are you going to put up? I said, well, what do you have in your kitchen? And she was like, pictures and this and that. And I said, so that's what we're putting up. We're making it into that real environment, and I'm fed up of paying lip service to pointless activities that are there. That's a tick box. Yes, you've got a dignity, you've got a dignity tree, and you've got words like care and this on the wall. No, that's not what's going to do it. Make the environment as homely as possible. So we've taken that away, and we've got amazing pictures, vintage food posters all over our kitchenette on that wing, because that's what you would recognise.
Feels like a kitchen.
It feels like a kitchen.
It's meaningful, it's purposeful.
Well, it is a kitchen.
Yeah.
We've actually put an occupational therapy kitchen in there.
Okay.
So the counters go up and down. It's an induction hob, so you're not going to burn yourself. So residents, if you don't want what's on at supper time, and you don't want something to come up specifically for you from the kitchen, like an omelette or a jack potato, whatever it is, alongside all of the supper options that come up on the trolley, you can actually say, you know what, I want baked beans on toast. So you go over to the kitchen cabinet, you take a tin of beans and you heat them up. And a carer is going to do that with you. There's only one key rule. You cook dinner, you wash it up. So the resident's empowered to actually do the washing up.
Them's the rules.
Them's the rules.
On that note, it's been an absolute pleasure, Sanjay. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Simon.
Pleasure.
Thank you.